Kart Life was a game Nathan and I got really, really into. It was a game where you took control of 2 or 3 different cart vendors, and you just had to kind of survive, essentially. You had to go in, open your shop up, get everything ready, set prices, help customers, and then use your money to live another day, essentially. It was really quite ingenious and intriguing, but nothing compared to its creator, Richard Hofmeier, who I had the pleasure of talking to many times after this episode, actually, just usually through social medias. Richard Hofmeier is to game devs what method actors are to acting. He's the type of person to get really, really involved in something and just lose himself in it. In the time I've known him, he was a game dev, of course, with Kart Life, took Kart Life off the store, was homeless for a little bit by choice, was, I think, a musician, a piano player in a bar or something like that, was a firefighter fighting fires in the Northwest here in I believe the Portland area when we had a bunch of giant fires going on. And recently it's been announced that Kart Life is coming back, being re-released, remastered, so people can enjoy it these days. If you haven't played Kart Life, I suggest checking it out when it comes out. Otherwise, enjoy the episode. It's one of my favorites.
Hey guys, welcome back to Indie Talks on Pixel Response. I'm Paul, and as always, I have Nathan with me.
Hello.
And today we're excited to talk to Richard Hofmeier, as you know, the creator of Kart Life, Nathan's Game of the Year last year, and my list as well, I guess. So this is a very special honor for us. How's it going, sir?
Oh, quite well. Thanks very much. Nathan, I didn't know that. You had such esteem for the game. I was going over your site earlier this morning. But somehow I missed it.
Okay. No,
that's
fine.
real sweet. Thanks so much. That's real fun. Thank you.
I guess like some of the explanations as to the specific things I liked about it will come out over the course of it. But yeah, if anyone hasn't had a chance to play it, go check it out right now. I'm not sure what kind of discussion we'll have about it, but this is going to be general talk about the game, and I kind of have just a bunch of questions about, like, I guess first it's the time limit of it, like the deciding on 1 week of story time. I'm just kind of curious, like, was that just like I guess just what was the inspiration for that kind of constraint on the story, so that it kind of just ends ambiguously sometimes, like just kind of the characters live on in your imagination? Was that kind of what you were going for? Or?
Yeah, it is. Now I can't say what your experience must have been like.
I've had 2 different endings with Andrus, and I'm like, I'm not sure how many more are in there, but that's kind of a thing I like about it, is just it lets you kind of help guide a character for a little bit, but then it just kind of leaves it, and you're just like, well, I hope that set him on a good path. I don't know. Like, it's just kind of an experience with characters I haven't seen in a lot of stuff. So, yeah, like, was there a specific game, or is it movies or literature or something? Like, what was kind of...
Well, it was tough to end the work on Kart Life. It was a hard thing to put down and kind of send out into the airwaves, as you might guess. There's a lot more work that could have gone into the game. I could have worked on this thing for the rest of my life, and all of the Windows compatible machines would crumble into dust, and I'd still be toiling away on this thing. So I had to let it go. It was really my girlfriend Jenny who was kind enough to really kick me in the ass and tell me to put that thing on the internet. So I did so, but I could have worked on it forever. But the endings, in being abrupt or kind of ambiguous, as you said, that was always the intention. It's pretty deliberate. Mainly trying to communicate the idea of this week, and if depending on who you play and how you play them, maybe the best reward is that they'll continue living in the way that you did together. Hopefully and then you get the idea, and then that way the character can kind of continue to live on, and you can make assumptions about their future life, and hopefully it's kind of a conceit intended to keep the character alive after the story, and so that they go on in the way that you're friends and relatives do. Hopefully, there will be a bunch of my dreams. There will be Cart Life players toiling around the old folks' homes of the future, regarding Andrus and Melanie and Vinny as former friends or family members of theirs. That's my dearest hope. But I don't know. Yeah, it's of the feedback that kind of stands out a bit. Especially it seems with Andrus's maybe his better endings, that people wanted to continue with him and maybe do a little better by him, maybe get a better place to live and stuff. But
yeah, my first ending went extremely terribly, which immediately prompted me to kind of have to revisit it and just be like, I can't leave that like that. That was just terrible. And it was like, I guess another aspect of it is just like the way the storyline is so connected to your successes and failures as a player of it is just kind of a noteworthy like aspect of it. Like, I guess was the initial kernel like dealing with finances? Was it just like how much people's lives are kind of like the ups and downs are like tied to their jobs? Was that kind of the point of inspiration, like the initial, or I guess, what was the, okay, sorry.
No, I think you've got it. It's it's hard to say exactly. I mean, it was a bunch of stuff. It's kind of, a self-portrait in some ways. I guess I don't want players ultimately feeling like I'm trying to make them feel bad, or I'm imposing a guilt trip on their on their leisure time. That's not the intention, at least not explicitly. I mean, it's I've always been kind of bad with money. I've had a lot of tight spots myself. I guess it is kind of it's a weird thing. I'm seeing other folks play this game, and so many of them regard it as kind of a guilt trip or something, a politically motivated portrait of the working poor. And it makes me kind of relieved that so many people are living well. I hope that doesn't sound callous. I don't intend it to, but it's kind of nice to hear that a lot of these folks who play games and think about them and work on them, it's such an exciting time. But I'm glad to hear that a lot of these folks are doing okay, and that they can regard the circumstances of Melanie and Andrus and Vinny as being unusually rough. That's good, and things have gotten better for me. It just I've gotten a little more work, and Cart Life is doing implausibly well. No idea that I was going to even be able to buy a cup of coffee from game sales. So it's so things are better now.
I know. Sorry, Paul. Like, I don't want to relate your experiences, but you said like it kind of brought back memories of retail jobs and whatnot, right? Like at the convenience store.
Oh yeah, like Andrus's things, specifically selling newspapers and coffee and
regular customers and all those kind of weird little touchstones. Definitely, like I haven't had that specific job experiences, but just kind of the life management stuff and like being a single guy with a cat and like all these weird little things kind of made that much more easy to get into the lives of these characters, which just kind of little details and things I don't see happening very often. Like they don't, like a guy with a pet, like why isn't there more stuff with that kind of life management? And I guess the life management side of things, I'm kind of curious, like did you have a larger list of things you'd have to deal with? Like I was also thinking like hydration or having to go to the bathroom for bathroom breaks, stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that one up. I mean, for me, when I'm playtesting the game now to fix bugs, which again could go on forever, but it seems conspicuously lacking with this game's apparent allegiance to realism that there's no shit or piss in the game. You don't have the bladder urgencies, and having.
Well, I always took it as like at the end of the day they go brush their teeth and stuff. It's like that's bathroom time, maybe.
Yeah. That's fair, and I appreciate you doing that for me. Kind of filling in the blanks for me. I do. I really appreciate it. I'm always stunned when players of Cart Life are willing to kind of do some work on its behalf, because it already asks so much of its players. But yeah, just specifically about the excretory life of these characters. It's one of the main hangs of of cart living. Talk to any street vendor and they'll tell you, especially if they're running the shop by themselves, a push cart or a coffee hut or something like that. It's one of the worst parts is because you have to find a lull in the day where you're not going to have any regulars coming by, and so you got to lock up the stand, and then you got to find some place who's going to let you use their bathroom, which is problematic. Often. In bigger cities, some places won't let you use the restroom unless you buy anything, and then you find yourself with like 45 packs of gum stacked up around the espresso machine just so that you can use the bathroom. It's a real concern. It's of the practical variety of concern that seems relevant for Cart Life to remark on. And every day I'm kicking myself for not putting it in there, but I didn't want it to be too much like The Sims, I guess.
Okay.
As great as The Sims may be for tackling that aspect of life and kind of forcing its players to confront the fact that they smell over time and that they have to like excrete bodily waste. Like that's something that games shouldn't be shy about remarking on, and I just didn't put it into Cart Life because I don't know. I was worried about maybe trying too much or.
Well, it did seem
hard.
like there's more than enough to fill the player's attention and fill the day.
Yeah.
So, like, I assumed it might have been on kind of a whiteboard somewhere. It's just like, we have to pare this down. Like, hunger and fatigue. That's a better way of going about it, but okay.
It's fair. I mean, again, I really appreciate you saying so. I really do think it's a valid criticism. There was so much that got eliminated from the game, so much that had to be cut for time and just to get the game out the door.
I guess like you were saying, like you could work on it forever. I'm just thinking, like, even within what you have, like just making more characters playable would result in kind of its own infinite task or whatever. Like, how did you arrive on your 3 protagonists? Like that right now.
I guess there's something in the lineage or the heritage of games about having playable characters that cover a spectrum, and they reveal their special traits in mutual company, right? So like I'm thinking of primarily like Gauntlet or something like that, or maybe Super Mario Brothers 2. They have different characters and they have different special traits, and you can it exaggerates the gameplay choices that you make when your characters are better at some things and worse at others. And so I wanted to make these 4 different street vendors and their products kind of exaggerate the world of Cart Life, and there were originally 4 of them. And this 4th character, his name was Logan, and you can still buy hot dogs from him on the bridge, Brennan Street Bridge, but he was a playable character for a while. But I thought his story was a little trite. He was taking care of his sick dad, and he had a girlfriend. He was a salesman. He got a severance, so he started with a lot of money, but he had a lot of unforeseen expenses and medical care and stuff, and it seemed a little trite and maybe a little bit too sentimental. But he had some good dialogue because he's kind of an asshole. So like dealing with customers and like the cops, like he could try to bribe the cop with a fine to get out of a fine. I mean, and there was a whole subplot there and there was a bunch of stuff. But the hot dogs were buggy. Had to cut him. But other stuff. I mean, there's kind of
that would explain. Yeah, like as Andrus, I bought a bunch of hot dog stuff.
Oh no!
All right. I guess I can't cook these. Oh well, I'll buy some gondola bars or something. I wasn't sure. Okay,
well,
that explains.
If you're having a lot of bugs, I mean, hopefully, I think the hot dogs are completely sealed up in the newest version, where in order to buy them, you have to have a cooler. And the cooler is only available to Logan, who isn't playable anymore. So hopefully they're sealed up. But yeah, they're problematic. And I always say I'd advise against buying hot dogs in your real life, in your time away from Cart Life as well, for similar reasons. They're very problematic for a number of reasons.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't. I was just like, I'm assuming there's another card I could buy, but oh well, I'll just stick with this for now. But okay. Trying to okay. So different spectrums. Okay, I did read an interview with you that you talked about boring entertainment as being something you're interested in. I'm just curious. I'm curious what examples from other mediums you would classify as a piece of boring entertainment that you found interesting.
Oh yeah, well, I guess. Well, I grew up and I was never good at it, and I didn't like to eat fish, but I liked fishing.
Okay.
just because it's a negative space. I grew up in kind of a small town in Montana, and there's not much to do but bowl and go fishing. Maybe, I guess, do homework. I guess there's that too. But I just like that people did this as leisure. I mean, it's always fascinated me that people go out there, and I mean, like, kind of catching a fish is the worst part of going fishing. Mostly, it's just to sit in mutual company and silence and breathe. I don't know. I don't want to get too sentimental about it, but like, that interested me at a super young age. All the, like, the toys and the circumstance, the fish, the challenge. It's all kind of a lie. It's all just an excuse to go sit out and be alone, or to be with somebody, but just shut the hell up for a while. And I thought it was so funny, just as a little guy. And so as I've grown up, I've kind of just been more fond of the negative space. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love super vibrant, electric, sugar kind of entertainment. And it's been a good year for them. I don't have to tell the two of you. There's lots of good stuff out there. But yeah, I mean, you're asking about other medium. Man, I don't want to be cliche, but David Foster Wallace's final book that ultimately went unfinished was about some tax accountants and the transcendent boredom of their day jobs of going over other people's taxes. It's a super good book because, you know, without a compelling occupation, the human mind just claws its way out and finds itself in some real strange territory, and boredom is what gets them there. It's transcendent in that way. You know, some French movies do it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess. Yeah, it just does it for me. I suppose. How about? I mean, what about you guys?
Look, I'm trying to think what I would consider like a touchstone for that. Like,
it might not
like
be
a certain film called The World by Zhang Ziqia, or some Terrence Malick films, perhaps, that are more kind of ponderous and slow down a lot.
Yeah, and I'm starting to think that maybe boring isn't exactly the right word. It's kind of confrontational, I guess, when I put it that way. Maybe I just mean reflective or
introspective.
I like to use the word mundane, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because that means something a little more specific, I suppose, and it's that it's stuff that's not often regarded within entertainment, or the mundane specifics, but I think for me they're the most interesting because they're what unite us best. You, Paul, and Nathan, and me. The things that we probably have most in common aren't the fact that, you know, the most exciting things about us separate us, and it's the more boring things that unite us, like the fact that we have to urinate occasionally, or, you know, that we have dreams about work, or that, you know, we struggle to make change for a $5 bill or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it definitely, like, one of the reasons I like regarded it so highly was just like, a lot of games kind of are more preoccupied with making you a hero of some kind, or you have some high ambitions to do something crazy by the end of the game. And this was more like, you paid rent and successfully bought cat food. Good job.
Which is huge in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's those small victories were so much more relatable. And it's just like, over the course of 1 week, all of this could conceivably happen. And that's really great. It doesn't go into the kind
like, I'm almost out of cat food in real life.
I am too.
And it's a terrifying prospect of the next week that I have to get out sometime and go get it.
I got to switch brands again, probably. He's not enjoying this one.
Yeah, my cat was puking too.
You got to be careful when your cat starts to vomit a lot. Make sure that you're not using some cat food that'll produce them. What are they called? Solvite crystals? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Struvite is the word. And then they have urinary block. It's very common in male cats.
To
me it's horrifying, much more so than like Dead Space or something. To me is the fact that, like, your cat can get essentially a fatal kidney stone. Like, that's horrifying
because of a decision you made.
Yeah, but it's and also that it's so common among male cats. It's just how they die. Yeah, it's like that is it's a mundane fact, but for the fact that it's so common, it's much more horrifying to me. I don't know. That's
like
kinda
just
weird.
related to a moment in the game. There was like a weird little horror moment that Paul and I both had where like
The cat got out.
You get back and it's like, oh, what? Where's my cat? And I was like, I was really late today. Maybe it's because I didn't feed him on time, and he just left. And like there was that little moment of like personal culpability and what happened, and that's just like, oh, okay, it was the landlady.
Yeah, that feeling of emptiness too. Like I've had that before, where I came home and somebody accidentally let the cat out, and you just feel helpless. And you're like, oh man, my only friend. And then your friend's like, hey, asshole, I'm right here.
Right.
But
yeah, I don't know. When I was man, I'm sorry, I'm going to bore you with another childhood tale of Richard Hofmeier. I'm so sorry, but it's when I was a kid growing up, we had a dog who loved to run out and roll around in dead carcasses. He'd find like a dead squirrel somewhere and roll around in it. And it was his favorite thing. Mm-hmm. And he was probably born stray. And this dog, his name was Blackjack, BJ for short. And so every time I'd come home from school and open the door, I had to make sure he wouldn't run away. And sometimes I'd just be thinking about like my homework or how like Mr. Wojciechowicz kicked my ass in 4th grade math class or something. And I'd just be distracted. And then BJ would just bolt out the door, and I'd never know if I'd see him again.
Yeah.
Oh man. And like I know that that's kind of a sentimental little story, but like it's his nature, and it makes you confront the idea that you're running an amateur prison.
Yes.
Pet ownership is it consensual entirely? I don't know. Is it? I mean, cats are a little more aloof. Dogs are more apparent in their affections. But when you have to confront the fact of your amateur prison, it's a little disturbing in a number of ways. I mean, not only do you feel guilty for letting him out, but you feel guilty for forcing him back inside too, and or forever having kept him there. And
I've definitely been thinking about that the past couple of years, just because like there's no other options for him in my family anymore. Like I kind of got my cat because my family didn't want to keep him anymore. It's just like, all right, so like kind of a best case scenario for him in some way, but I do feel like it's what is it? Stockholm syndrome kind of thing.
Yeah, the only affection you get is because the cat is relying on you.
Yeah,
so
he's
developed a bond with you.
Yeah, he's sitting there right now. It's just like, I'm sorry, but I don't know. It's just a weird, that weird relationship humans have with animals. It's just like, are they there for their own benefit, or like, are we really helping them, or are we just kind of using them to make us feel better or something?
Exactly, and I think you can take that exact same angst and anxiety and extrapolate it. I don't think with too much reduction or detriment, I think you can take that anxiety and extrapolate it to all of society. I mean, certainly parenthood and having a kid, entrusting your kids to a public school system, which is essentially a custodial role for public schools, and, they're caretaking for kids and that dynamic as well. And then you start to think about civility and commerce at large, and this kind of mutual dependency that we have that's not entirely consensual, and everybody's kind of trying to find a way out of it. Man, it's spooky stuff, and it starts to kind of unpack. I think when you dwell on the mundane specifics, you can pop the seams and look underneath the clothing of the whole deal. That's the intention. I don't know if I pulled it off completely, but that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
That kind of like brings us to some of Melanie's preoccupations, like her picking up Laura and everything, like the that kind of single mother like responsibilities and such. I'm trying to think like the school system stuff. Like, I guess I just feel like I haven't necessarily investigated like all the stuff that could happen in that storyline. Like I only played that one once, whereas I've done Andrews a couple times. I don't know how like explicitly like what to ask, but like, is there a lot of variability in the endings for Melanie, or like I got the sense that Andrus has a couple different ways that could go, and I've seen two very, very different ones. But I wasn't 100% sure with the one I got with Melanie. It's just like, oh, I don't know. Maybe this one ends a little more concretely, but maybe that was just me again. I don't know. There are shades. I mean, I don't want to say that it's infinite, but I kind of want to tell you that it's infinite because I want you to believe that. So you can go back and investigate. It's like, oh, I don't know.
It's a magic trick. I mean, there are several endings for each of the characters. But I suppose that what Andrus and Melanie both share in their best endings is this kind of somewhat abrupt ending, but that they're telling you, both characters say so in their best endings, is that things are going to be okay without you, the player, without your agency, without your control. Like they're going to live the same way that you'd lived together. They're going to continue on, and that's the reward for your toil and your careful hard work, is that they'll get to keep doing it. That's what that's what you've learned.
You taught them
together.
how to live.
Yeah. You kind of got through the worst of it, and things are going to be okay. But as things get a little bit worse, or maybe you don't meet all the demands, it starts to, the shades become more clear. Also, there's a bus depot, and you can, or a train depot rather, and you can take the train, and that's another ending in it. For each of the characters too, and they can all do that. It's $200, so not everybody's going to see that, of course, but it's there. It's an option. There's, that's how the characters might quit. It was always important to me from the very beginning of the game is that at the very least, no matter how this game gets made, you have to be able to win, lose, or leave. At the very least, you have to be able to meet the challenge, fail to meet it, or skip town. At the very least, that seemed to, the kind of spectrum of options triangulated by those choices. I don't know.
Is that like, were those options something like you started Cart Life with wanting to build towards, or were like those playtesting or something where people like, oh, a lot of players want to do this, I should account for that? Or was it, no, I had this notion?
Yeah, it was, those were there at the beginning, I suppose. The question was how well to flesh those things out. Talking about how you could work on this game for forever, and it could be a whole life's work. Maybe after you take the depot to a different town, maybe you can set up a new cart there if you still have money, and it's a totally different circumstance with different people, and it could be infinite in that way. And that's the fantasy, I suppose, of Cart Life, is that once you get past the conceit of it's not actually only a retail simulation, it's trying to do a little bit more. Once that's revealed to you as in playing it, my dearest interest in crafting it is that the illusion is as complete as possible, that you can really live these characters' lives. You can live them fully and completely, except they don't go to the bathroom. I'm really torn. I know it's going in. It's got to go.
I feel bad. Like I mentioned that early, but
well, no,
that's a work concern often, where it's just crud, there's a big line, and I'm here, and I was just like, I bet that would have been too irritating though. I think that's the only thing, is that it's hard already. But it, I don't know. A while I talked to Tarn and Zach Adams, who made Dwarf Fortress, and I was trying a kind of failed career of being a games critic, and in the interview, I was really giving them a hard time about, for all their allegiance to realism, the violence in Dwarf Fortress is beautiful and deep. The number of eyelashes that each of the fantasy creatures have is rendered in Dwarf Fortress. You can, like their guts, their respiratory system, everything is modeled. It's unbelievable depth. And yet, you don't have to manage a sewer system or any kind of like effluvia from these characters. There's no shit or piss cannons. There's no you don't have to manage. There's it's a vector for disease. There's a number of practical concerns in running a small society that you do in Dwarf Fortress. That's like a real pragmatic kind of material concern, and it's done away with. They just they didn't want to be that game, and I gave them a really hard time about it. So I'm feeling especially hypocritical now for kind of wanting to make as realistic a game as possible, and just being like, well, I don't want it to be embarrassing. It's a total cop-out.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a weird, it's almost like its own version of the uncanny valley. Like, the more you aspire to reflect reality, you'll start noticing things that you can't do almost immediately, because it closely resembles so many other aspects of it. So it's like...
That's really astute. That's a very good observation. But simultaneously, I guess my argument, if I would have done it, and if I'm going to pretend to make an argument for why I did put shit and piss in the game, is that it's an opportunity to endear you to this person more, and to give you a greater sense of living their life. And so if you have a reflective moment on the John, or maybe you have a long line of customers and you really have to pee, that's something that anybody can relate to.
That sucks. Yeah.
So I don't know. Sorry to dwell on this. I was talking about the one thing that's not in the game.
It's kind of funny you bring it up, actually, because my girlfriend played it for the first time this last weekend here, and she absolutely loves it. She was playing Melanie's campaign, and there was a point where she went to the bathroom in it, and she's like, "Why can't I just pee?"
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I don't know."
I'm always glad to hear when women give this game a shot and get something out of it. It's a real interest of mine, and is to kind of pursue a female audience.
She actually made me promise to tell you that she loved the game. So
that's sweet. That's real nice. It does mean a lot to me. I really seek out feedback from female players. Part of it is, in any kind of art, whether you're writing books or comics or making movies or anything. If you're presuming, let's see, it seems a presumptuous presumption to presume that a male could envision a female's life with this kind of proximity, or that I could try to, that you, a male player, and me, a male game maker,
right,
can experience a female life together, or can tell the story of a woman, especially a mother. It's kind of a profane trespass. Like I don't belong in that territory. So it's
validating when someone agrees with what you've done with it.
Exactly. I don't know if it's validated. I don't know if it can ever be validated, because it's always going to be wrong. But it's nice to hear that it works, though, or that it's enjoyable, or that it holds water, or that it's seaworthy at all.
That it's inoffensive is good.
Well, I don't think of it inoffensive as much of a virtue, but I smell what you're stepping at.
In video games, it's kind of a virtue.
I don't know. There's kind of a sea change right now. And it's part of this larger. We're only starting this great future relationship where games and women. This kind of ongoing familiarity, and as it happens, for me, anyways, I mean, it's all a matter of taste, but for me, most of the interesting stuff, the writing and thinking that's going on right now is kind of in the province of feminism and kind of how to comprehensively reevaluate the materiality of games themselves in order to better facilitate, a woman's perspective, or a woman's playthrough, or a woman's enjoyment, and things like that. It's super interesting to me, because it's like a whole. I don't know. I mean, it's necessary. It has to happen because I don't know. So anyway, my point is that my only playtester really, aside from a couple of really earnest and very helpful and sincere Germans, who happen to catch all of my spelling mistakes, which is especially humiliating. They speak English better than I do. It's kind of embarrassing. But really, it was my girlfriend Jenny, and so really, she brought a lot to it. She's had a ton of jobs. She's a journalist now. She used to be a waitress, and so we kind of between the two of us, I think, tried to pull this long con of making a female protagonist. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
But so I guess either of you, I'd like to hear more about your playthrough as Melanie. I just
there were at some point early in mine, I kind of just made this weird decision to just be like, I don't think I can spend enough time at work and walk Laura home from school all the time. Yeah. So
it was a weird juggling act.
Yeah, but then I don't know if it was just I was not finding stuff, but there was definitely points where I would get home and there was just kind of nothing. She's already upset and she's up in her room, and I was just like, all right, well, I guess I'll just eat more salad rolls and wait around and look
biscuits
at
and gravy.
Yeah, I guess I don't like being very critical, but it's I maybe just leisure time. Is there options just watch TV or something, or that kind of?
There's some. There's a bookstore downtown.
Yes, okay.
And there are comic books and there's a couple fiction stories and stuff. In the next version of the game, there's a kind of a content fix in the next build, and so there's going to be a lot more books, and that you can watch the TV and stuff like that in the next update.
Because ideally, I shouldn't be wasting these characters' time. Like, they have important stuff to do, but it's just like, I don't know. Like, I kind of just want to kick back for a bit so I don't wake up too early or something.
It's a good point. Yeah, you can also read the newspapers as well, and there's a lot of descriptions for each of the items. Like, you can read the divorce papers and the permits and stuff. There's a lot of content there, but I guess what's mostly lacking. I mean, if I were either of you, I would probably most find it worth bitching about the relationships and how they lack. And that's something I've tried to fix in the next version. So instead of just eating leftovers or just showing Melanie chew up the food that her sister made her for breakfast, they actually sit down for breakfast and they have a conversation.
Oh, okay.
Like this, it's a little more.
Because there was the walks to school. Yes, with Laura, but your sister you kind of don't interact with as often. But there were some good scenes, I guess you could call them. But trying to think, like there seemed to be a bit of a difference in just the storytelling, like devices employed between, like Andrus has his dream sequences, but then I wasn't getting dream sequences with Melanie, but I figured the substitute was the conversations on the way to school,
it's the dreams are kind of reflective, or they're intended to be, of the choices that you make during your playthrough. So Melanie does have a lot of dream sequences that are kind of engineered. Some of them are more
so I just wasn't getting into stressful situations or something, or
I don't want to say specifically what they are.
What triggers them? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But they're kind of if you have a number of components and they happen to coincide on the same days or something. So she does have a lot of them, but
okay. Yeah, so I must have been doing a pretty lazy playthrough or something.
No. It's not that. It's supposed to be kind of concealed or hidden. It's not supposed to come up every time. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff in the game that's kind of that type. It's hidden, or it's not exactly like a secret, because it's not as rewarding. It's not, you're not going to find like a bunch of 1-ups in a garbage can. But, it'll there's content there. There's a part of the character's story that can change, or people that they meet, or conversation that they have, or something like that. And that's the only reward, is just something kind of small, or maybe a dream, or a weird conversation, or a joke, or maybe you see something really strange. It's supposed to evoke life.
Yeah.
So maybe you do get an extra life out of it. No,
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
I'm trying to think what other highlights really from Melanie. Like, I guess I'm not very familiar with coffee, so I was happy to have my girlfriend there who's worked in a coffee shop to kind of walk me through the ingredients and such. That was helpful. I was just like, what's in an Americano? I don't know, like that kind of fast-paced stuff. And I was screwing up orders and whatnot horribly. But I guess, like, between that and like newspaper salesman and everything, I haven't played Vinny's story yet, but they all kind of relate, like make just real shopkeepers more relatable, I guess, in a way. Like, you feel a little better for your barista at the local coffee store.
Yeah.
Post playing it. Like, that's kind of a neat little, not like, I don't know if education is the right word, but like, because it's a fictional character, but they're reflective of reality, and it does have sort of a unique way of imparting kind of a social lesson, maybe.
Like how much time it takes to do one order, sort of thing. Yeah. Or
like people getting impatient, or the importance of tips. Like, I remember an early conversation that was important for me to like get excited about Cart Life was Idle Thumbs talking about it. I'm not sure if you're familiar with their podcast. But,
I listen to it every night before I go to bed. The one on Cart Life.
Great.
Their praise of this game, it nourishes me so well.
I believe it was Sean Vanneman talking about the importance of a tip, and it was the first time he'd really reflected on how much of a make or break. I guess that's even more so like in the United States. Like, we've been having conversations about minimum wage laws and whatnot in light of the Applebee's thing. I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with. Yeah, like, it's just like that's another like way again to kind of let people have this little slice of that kind of experience, like what it would be like for $5 to matter that much to somebody, right?
Well, it's interesting in how it varies by state, I think. I mean, card vendors, especially if you're, a sole proprietorship kind of business, you're not making an hourly wage anyways. you're just making a portion of the money that comes in that you don't put back into the business, right? And your personal expenses and your business expenses, they're all commingled, right? In the way that they are in Cart Life. Although there's no taxes in Cart Life, there should be. Is you should have to parse exactly how much of your income and do you claim your tips, and the taxes I think would be another fulfilling part of it.
I would love that, yeah, for sure.
I should probably put that in the next bill too, but yeah, that's part of it. But anyways, like waitresses, for example, or baristas in some cases, it varies by state here in the U.S. And so in some states, minimum wage law applies, like Montana, where I grew up, and my girlfriend was a waitress there for a while, and I waited tables a little bit myself, and it was a great state to do it in. It's a pretty good job for that state because you got paid minimum wage as well as getting the tips. In most states, it's not that way. You don't get paid the full minimum wage because your employer and the state and stuff, they account for the fact that they assume that you're going to get tip income, and then so they kind of average it, and it's kind of, it varies by state, but for the most part, it's not uncommon to find a waitress who's making, less than $3 an hour.
Yeah. Because
they assume that her tips will be supplementary sufficiently.
Right.
So it's not uncommon. So it's a tricky job, and I tips is nebulous. It's weird. It's kind of become fashionable, I suppose, lately on the internet to Reddit, I suppose. You see a lot of complaints about how poorly you're tipped, and there's a lot of sympathy for service industry workers and servers and baristas. Like somebody will write a snarky comment or stiff them on a tip, or maybe give them a huge one, and it's relatable.
Yeah,
it's understandable because the stakes are high. I mean, these people, they got to do laundry, you got to you got to pay rent, and you have like a big pile of ones in your glove box, or your purse is full of quarters and it weighs 1 million pounds. Like it's a strange way to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems, I don't know if it's fair to like kind of that sort of relates to documentaries in a way to me, like just that kind of representation of reality, or like, did you do that kind of, like I've heard some vague story about like you investigating what smoking's all about in order to understand Andrus's like addictions or whatever, like that kind of like character research. Like, did you spend time with cart vendors and like going out and kind of really investigating like interviews and such? Like,
that all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I've become friends with a couple of street vendors, but that wasn't until after I started the game. I used to have a fantasy about running my own cart, but this game certainly talked me out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm quite an adult enough to live up to the responsibility. Thankfully, I can scrape by with the bathrobe and coffee cup, and I don't have to go pull espresso shots yet. I mean, we'll see. I'm better suited to construction work or washing windows or anyways, my research into street vending. Yeah, I mean, I talked with a lot of vendors. There's really great street food and carts and coffee in all of the cities in which I've lived, mostly in the American Northwest, kind of Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon kind of areas. But also, like, the city websites are super helpful. Getting most of the food handlers permits now, you can just take tests online, which is helpful. In researching the game. I did. Since Andrus was a smoker, since you brought that up, I'll just remark on it super fast. I didn't know what it's like. Most of my family members are tobacco users, and I'd ask. I'd always heard stories about how having a cigarette, if you're starving, can kind of suppress your appetite. You don't feel hungry anymore. And they're relaxing, but they're also a stimulant. It seemed very mysterious and nebulous to me. So I started, I got a pack of cigarettes just to see what it'd be like. And of course I knew there'd be a workaround. They make you sick for a while, and then eventually they're great. I couldn't recommend them more highly, as a matter of fact. They're pretty fantastic. But yeah, as research for the game, I felt it had to be done to understand how these things kind of correlated. So that's part of it.
Like, is it a certain like just feeling of responsibility to get it authentic or whatever? Like, just to
well, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want to get a detail as important as that wrong.
Right.
And asking about it in certain things, like for example, like living in a really crappy hotel, or smoking cigarettes, or pulling espresso shots. Like there's so much nuance in these things that to just have a conversation about it or research it online and read all the Wikipedia pages, it's just not enough. It's not going to get you there. You got to get your hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For what it's worth for the smoking thing, like I'm a smoker, so there are points of my day where I just know I'll have a cigarette, and I actually try to play through with Andrus, where like this is where I would smoke, like on the way to work or whatever. If I got up early, I'm walking to work because he doesn't have very much money, so he would have a cigarette like right before he started or whatever. Then he would take a lunch break and he would have a cigarette right after eating and stuff. So it's kind of weird because the way that correlates to my experiences as a real person, I never actually had to worry about the smoking meter because it was always perfect.
Good. Oh, yeah, I'm glad to hear it.
So I'm hoping that maybe validates you smoking a little bit. So
well, it turns out it's its own reward. I mean,
it works quite well. Yeah,
I get a lot out of it. And I think I'm glad the game is. It sounds like the game might be a little bit better for having that, but also I'm happy to be smoking cigarettes. I enjoy them a lot. But anyways, yeah, I'm glad to hear it. They are a little bit dynamic in the game, so where man, I kind of almost don't want to ruin it, but some players often wonder if you can get him to quit by not smoking at all, and if you can go a cold turkey week, maybe Andrus won't smoke anymore, and that's of interest to me, and I anticipated that interest in players because a lot of people are so averse to cigarettes and smoking that would be a primary gameplay interest for them, and so that's accommodated as well in different ways and with different results depending on how you play it.
Weird. Like as a smoker, I never even considered that. I was just like, no, he just needs a cigarette every now and then. He's good.
Yeah.
Whereas I was running into like, why is he coughing? And it's just like, oh right. And then I'd run out or something and just have to go make an emergency run to the store. Like it was not in my mind. Like it was a new thing to consider. For this guy. I'm trying to like you also you did in this other interview, I can't remember actually where it was, sorry. You were talking about bringing Andrus to a convention and then feeling really bad about having that happen. Like just it's not the kind of game where you can just kind of pick it up and drop it, so like your character's there kind of trapped doing really poorly, standing on the side of the street wasting time. I'm just like, it's just kind of this, like, how did you come up with the kind of balance between how much the characters are their own kind of personalities versus how much is up to the player? Like, I also kind of was thinking, like, Melanie won't eat gondola bars past a certain point. She just doesn't like them.
Yeah.
And she has her own kind of opinion on that the player then has to go like, all right, well, I'll deal with that because, like, they're their own kind of defined personality already. So you're kind of creating like a little box with a person in it, kind of.
Right.
At some
point.
It's
I suppose. I mean, it's real tricky. I think that's my favorite thing about games is the ways in. I mean, like we have this term role playing game. It's always kind of bothered me because like it should be. I don't want to get into like this a bullshit semantic debate or anything like that, or voice my complaints about problematic language because that gets really annoying. It's not of use to anybody, but nonetheless, here we go. Role-playing games, that phrase has always really bugged me because isn't really every game a role-playing game? Even Tetris or like the board game Sorry or something like that. Like there's still a role, there's a meta game, there's the fact of your engaging with it as a piece of entertainment or a challenge, or that you're getting better at it. Like you're playing a role. And especially in a game with a character, any game with a character. So whether it's a first-person shooter or a puzzle platform, it doesn't matter. Like if you have a character with a character's name and you're playing them, you're making their choices, you're acting as them. Right. And so for Cart Life, that's the whole reason why I wanted to make it, was to investigate that mystery. And so I kind of, just because I wanted to be kind of careful about it, did a little cursory research into some kind of psychoanalysis fundamentals about like the id, superego, and the ego, and the ways in which, in order to kind of draw those boundaries, like you were saying about, it's mostly what the characters are unable to do or they find themselves incapable of. That's when you see their personality. So it's unfortunately like it's mostly you hear from the player complaints for the most part. Like I'm too tired, I'm too hungry, I gotta go to sleep. Whatever it is, or their anxiety. Melanie gets headaches, and like that's the only time that they're really even saying anything to you directly. But of course, they're only talking to themselves. But there's a couple of spots, Vinny more so, where he's a little bit more playful in his internal dialogues. So there's a little bit more reward there. But I hope people don't think that Melanie's addiction is that she loves her daughter. It's that she's picky about food and she gets sick of food quickly.
Right.
There's little stuff like that. But ultimately, you have to be in control of their lives and their actions and their decisions and, how they respond in conversations. That has to all be up to you. Otherwise, none of the rewards would be rewarding. None of the
have you gotten feedback where people are getting kind of frustrated with not being able to work past a certain point and such, or like, because for me that kind of elicited a lot of empathy. Like it's just like, it's like midnight. What are we doing? Like, we got to get back. Like that kind of.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, mostly when people have gotten to the point where they're going to voice a grievance with me, which I'm always happy to hear it. I mean, I'd love to hear every thought on this game. I know it. I don't know if that like dampens my artistic integrity or my credibility or something, but I love hearing people talk about their experience with the game because they're so different and they're so like people are doing half of the work. They're creating the game,
right?
Half of it at least, maybe 3/4 of it. Who knows? They're just as responsible for this game as I am. So that's why I like hearing people's experiences. And so when they do voice a grievance with me, it's always just that there are bugs, and that's something that it's going to torment me endlessly until I die. Is that if you I've worked in a lot of other mediums kind of unsuccessfully, but if you write a book and you put a semicolon instead of a colon, it doesn't slam shut in the reader's hands or burst into flames.
Right.
You're like, there's a typo, if you even notice it, and then you blow right past it, right?
Right.
Or maybe at best you think it's some kind of like a quirk in the author's sensibility. If you're it's mistakes in visual art most often that are most interesting or most indicative of an artist's sensibilities. It's the shortcomings or the divergences. It's breaking the rules that makes them more interesting. But so when you're making a game, there's kind of this tricky balance where it has to be structurally sound. It has to have a programmatic integrity, and Cart Life, of course, is lacking severely in that regard. And so the only way that people really complain about the game is it's most often one of two things: is bugs. Screenshots are very helpful, by the way, if anybody wants to send them in.
Okay.
But also that the clock goes too fast. I get that one a lot too.
Huh.
But I'm not. I'll die before I change the clock. I'll die before I let you pause Cart Life.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I like is that it goes fast.
That stress of time is, again, another extremely relatable thing that I don't feel a lot of games take into account, which is kind of weird. Same with sleep. Like I was trying to think of other games that actually have sleep as an important thing, and then too often it's just like, how is this guy working through the night and then just going on like nothing's wrong? Like, why isn't there a fatigue meter in some stuff? And I was like thinking, like, Skyrim has the well-rested bonus, so it's like, hey, we're not going to like punish you for not sleeping, but we're going to try to kind of encourage it subtly. But like, I guess my question would be kind of like, what games with kind of a time, like day-night cycles, time mechanics and stuff, did you pull from any of those, or were you just kind of looking at real life and trying to? Well,
yeah, I mean, it's a combination of them. I'd love to claim complete credit for it, but it certainly owes a bit of its lineage to a couple of games specifically. When I was a super young human, we had a little Atari computer in my home, and we played. My brother and sisters and I played the hell out of these games. One of them was called Sundog. it's a lot like FTL, as a matter of fact. The company who developed this game was called FTL Faster Than Light, and it's an old software company, and they're long out of business. But it's a space sim, and it looks a lot like the FTL that we all now know and love, but they're different in our memories. Anyways, my point in bringing it up is that there's copy-pasted. Cart Life essentially just stole wholesale from this game the food and sleep meters, and there's like a hit points one up there too, and so you have to like eat space French fries and space burgers and drink space beer, and then you also have to sleep. But there's no more flavor to it than that. It's just a need that you have to satisfy. And so if your character doesn't sleep, he just passes out in public, and then everybody steals his shit. So that's an incentive not to do it. You don't get drunk in a bar and pass out because you'll wake up without a gun and all your money's gone.
Yeah.
So there's it's just a gameplay conceit. It's not a means of, not explicitly a means of making you feel a greater connection with your player character, who's essentially just an empty vessel. They're just a mask for you to wear to play the game. But it's an interesting material concern, especially in combination with space travel and the way that the game deals with like the vast universe. So there's no day or night cycles, but you have to sleep and you have to know that you're eventually going to get tired again. It's an interesting mechanical concern. And so I thought like kind of combining that with the real world concerns would give you a better parallel of life. I don't know. That's what I was hoping to do.
Right.
So it's, stolen, but
or I guess my other point was the Clockwork City kind of thing you have going on, like with different people be at different places at certain times and stuff. Was that taken from any specific thing, or representing real people with real schedules and such?
Yeah. Well, I guess it was because I might have stolen it from somewhere, and it slips my mind just now. But it also, when you put it that way, I just think it seems
not like stolen, like an illusion.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I probably stole it though. I mean, I steal everything. That's the point. Is that there's no original thought here. But
okay.
I guess it seems like the only logical answer because with so much of the gameplay being self-similar, you're Andrus and you're going to go to 5th and Franklin and until you make a decision to move your stand if you ever do it. And so you're in the same part of town. And so there has to be, you can't just have the same person coming by. And I didn't want to use a representation of a type. I didn't want to have the cop character represent a bunch of cops, and so you're serving a cop. And all
okay,
you know what I mean?
Like named characters for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which that probably does present its own issues, right? Because one of my critiques of it when I was first playing was just it's kind of weird. This cop's buying 5 newspapers a day.
All right.
What's going on? But I guess he needs them. I don't know. But at the same time, I was trying to think what would the alternative be? It would be scripting so many characters, and there was already so many that have their own little dialogue and whatnot. It's just that would be insane. So I'm not going to expect that. That's crazy.
It's got to be done. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those tricky things. It's kind of a black hole where it has to be done, but the more you do it, the more it's lacking almost. Mainly because I'm worried because the 2 free characters are super stationary, and the pay character Vinny has this bagel cart, and you can push it all over town. You can go wherever you want. And so if you have a permit, you can sell in a certain part of town and stick around there forever. But you can also go to different parts of town and try to sell there and get away with it as long as you don't get busted and receive a fine. And so that way you see a lot more of the customer behavior with Vinny, because there's different characters only visit certain parts of town during certain times of day. And so if you only play as Andrus, for example, and you only see 5th and Franklin, you're only going to see maybe 10% of the characters in the game. So it's kind of a combination of you have to fill the city with a city's worth of people, but then you also have to subdivide them into their own routines in order for it to be realistic too. So that way when you leave 5th and Franklin, you see people that you've never seen before, and you realize that the city's bigger than you thought it was, and that's all pretty essential too.
Right. And that just becomes exponentially bigger and bigger task the more you get obsessed about it, right? So I'm very impressed with how it turned out.
Absolutely.
It's very kind. Thanks very much.
It's such a, I think we were talking about other open world games, and it kind of, this I guess you could call it an open world, but it gives the sense of a city really well. But if you really look at it, it's like, well, there's like a few dozen people here, maybe, or a couple. Like, I guess I don't need to know the exact number of characters in the game. I'm sure you know exactly, but
there are 347 characters in the game.
Damn.
Okay. Yeah.
No, that's a lie. There's not that many.
Okay. You have me. See?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like,
Well, there's only 347 if you count the dream characters.
Oh, okay.
Including that giant lineup.
That's also a lie. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I'm ready now, but okay. I'll have to play as Vinny. There's a third of this game I still haven't seen.
Yeah.
But I guess how quickly did the collector's edition run out? Because I was there ready to go, and I was just like, oh, it's gone. Like,
yeah, it was super fast. And what's funny, I don't know, maybe it's only funny to me, is that we sent him. I like the story because it starts out as a brag and it ends on kind of a like a fart noise or a sad trumpet, because it's glorious. We shipped these little cans containing my hopes and dreams to like Malaysia, to Vladivostok. We shipped them to Russia and France, Japan, Chile, Germany, all over the world, and only one to the U.S. And it was someone that I'd never met. It was like a mom, and she was buying it for her son. So thanks a lot, friends and family, for jumping on them collector's editions. But no, they did. They ran out super duper fast. I had no idea that anybody was ever going to take an interest in this stuff. I really didn't. I really can't communicate that clearly enough. I don't want to sound insincere or like falsely modest. I thought it was just going to be me and my friends playing this game. And so when people bought those at all, let alone the folks who did, it was a surprise and a real encouragement. For right now, I mean, I'm not sure what the state will be when y'all put this interview up on your great website, but there are some new ones up there now. We restocked, and I bought a bunch of tin cans and stuff, and drew a bunch of cartoons and things. So they're back up there for now. But who knows? They're gonna.
What is that edition called? Like, there's the Everything edition. Is $5.
Yeah, it's the deluxe.
It's the Deluxo edition.
So it's got a couple of. I mean, thanks for indulging me here. I feel like this is the part where I plug my paperback, but it's fine. It's a little can. And so the books in the bookstore that I'd mentioned earlier, there's little tiny editions of those books in the can, so that you don't have to waste Andrus or Melanie or Vinny's time in the bookstore and reading them if you want to know what the stories are.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So there's little books in the can, and a little cartoon and some silk and a little thing, little feelies, just little feelies. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I like the can. Like, I just want the can on my shelf. That's it.
I can get you one.
At a price. It'll cost you.
I know a guy.
I'm not sure like what to ask really about the IGF nominations, but like how did you feel that and when those announcements came in, or
I got to tell you a story.
Okay.
I'm sorry about this, but I got to do it.
No, it's fine.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. I didn't want to submit to it. Because it's $100 to submit. Mm-hmm. And it was released in 2011, technically. It debuted, although, I mean, it wasn't really seaworthy, and it wasn't really spoken about until January of 2012. But I just, I didn't know. But, my good buddies who had the faith in the game at that point that I didn't convince me to do so. Mm-hmm. And so, I just try not to hold my breath. But, of course, I'm a big narcissist, and I'm checking the IGF website every day.
Yeah.
And one night I had the craziest, most vivid dreams. And one of them, you know how it is, like when you feel like you're asleep for years and years and you wake up and it's like 5 minutes later.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those nights. And in the dream, my girlfriend, Jenny, was in a little canoe. And it was a nice sunny day, and we're on this green lake. And I'm kind of pushing the canoe and swimming below it, looking in the mud and seeing the weird stuff that people have dropped into the lake and just kind of seeing what's down there. And Jenny was kind of giving me a hard time. She said, "Why are you interested in all that gross, disgusting stuff at the bottom? Why don't you come up here into the boat where it's sunny and relaxing and comfortable?" And we just kind of floated along like that for a really long time. And then when I woke up, it was Jenny calling me frantically. She was in Boise on a business trip, and she's calling me. She's like, "Look at the IGF," and I've got a million emails from my friends and fans of the game saying congratulations, and it was just it's a day I'll never forget. I don't want to get too sappy about it, but for the way that dream kind of paralleled, the way that this girl had encouraged me to make the game in the first place, and kind of encouraged me to enjoy it and come into the light to let other people enjoy the game and to enjoy it, to be comfortable instead of just being interested in all the sad leftovers at the bottom of the lake. It seemed to parallel this experience of waking up to the IGF nomination. So it's something that I'll never understand. I mean, just the other day I was looking through the entrance, and it just I wanted to see if Proteus was submitted, and it wasn't. So it's I don't know, maybe it was last year or will be next, but I wanted to see if it was, mainly because I can't fathom that the judges would select this game with all of its bugs and shortcomings and bladder absence, like that they would find it worth remarking on, or especially to the extent that they have. It's something I don't think I'll ever really understand, but I know to be grateful. I know to be very happy about it.
Sorry, Nathan. It sounded like you had something to say. That's why I didn't pipe up after that.
Yeah. Sorry. I like it's completely unrelated now, and I feel bad because like that was a very good story, and like that's the point to end on. But no, I have more questions.
Let's go. Let's do it.
I'm just curious, like, have you been part of the game jam scene at all? It's just kind of been a thing we've been talking about with a lot of developers, or like.
I always try and fail. I'm just too slow. I'm just too damn slow. I've tried a bunch of times to try to make like one of the game that comes with Cart Life is called Lawn Defender. It's like a little throwaway nothing, just a little bonus to put in the can. But that was part of an AGS competition for hour games. You make a game in an hour.
Oh wow!
And I was trying to like build my muscles, my game making muscles, doing those tiny hour game competitions, and I was always late. And the games they never worked. They were always just fractured. And some things just simply take longer. I mean, some people can sit down and write a novel in a month. It just blows my mind. It just can't be done. I really have to metabolize it and dwell on it. And I mean, I'm the kind of guy who's got to learn how to smoke before I can make a game about a smoker, So
yeah, I'm
always really awful at game jams, but they interest me, and of course they're great vectors for creativity and excellent work. Some of my very favorite games originated as game jam games. It's probably the same for the two of you, I would imagine.
It's definitely been a thing I've been paying attention to more and more lately, and I don't know. I guess a lot of it's just kind of the community aspect around it, and the networking and whatnot has been really valuable. Like, do you get to interact with like fellow developers a lot? Like, have you entered in the network of people online?
Well, it's been a weird year. I went to GDC last year, and I didn't know anybody, and it was pretty lonely, but it was also a lot of fun. Like, I was in a position where I didn't really have anything to lose, so I told a lot of lies, made a lot of friends, made a lot of enemies.
Okay.
So it was it was a good time, and meeting these folks, and kind of like game developers tend to I don't want to overgeneralize here, but it's a solitary kind of activity for the most part.
Right.
Pushing pixels or kind of configuring code, optimizing code. It's careful work. It has a low frustration tolerance, so you kind of want to be alone for it without distractions. Right. So we're all kind of like cave dwellers, and so when we crawl out of this caves and we all get drunk in mutual company, friendships build up real quick, because it's a weird thing that we're doing. It's incredibly magical, and it's exciting. It's of relevance to every conceivable discipline, whether you're a doctor or a cop or a novelist or an advertiser or a mechanic. Video games are going to be of interest to you. They relate to your discipline. They relate to your craft, no matter what you do. And so, like, being the people who are trying to acquaint ourselves and learn this craft now, it's super exciting, and it's a weird thing. And so friendships happen fast, and they're real meaningful. But so my point about GDC is, like, last year it was weird. I had a hard time pulling on people's coats, and then I went to IndieCade this in October and had the time of my life. It was great. Game developers are the best people on the planet.
So there's just a real different atmosphere there, or like?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I don't think I'm familiar enough to say, but I think that like because GDC is kind of a larger proposition, right? Like it's it's vendors and it's game developers themselves, it's games critics, it's journalists, it's people with really precise jobs in software and hardware, distributors, licensors, attorneys, marketers, writers, actors, the whole spectrum. Indicators a little smaller scale, and so it was easier to find your water level, because it's mostly just other folks who play a certain kind of game with a certain objective. There's kind of a shared interest among the games that were picked for IndieCade, that they're more in the realm of art, or they're more kind of deliberately unusual
or experimental in a lot of ways. Or?
Yeah, exactly right. So and also like kind of with like less emphasis on, well, the score. So it was great. And I love my new indie friends like family, but I think that it makes the word indie even sillier to use.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because we're not independent of anyone, and I'd like to be less indie, frankly. I'd like to have more mutual witness in the world. Finding creative congress and good mutual witnesses is tough no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a kind of a solitary job like this one, it becomes especially meaningful. And also like getting good feedback, finding out what works and what doesn't after you've been staring at a game for 4 goddamn years. You need a new pair of eyeballs. And, if a game's not ready to float to the public and you want to show it to somebody else who's kind of has the same goals that you do or the same tastes, it's of use. It's of use to make these mutual acquaintances. So it's been great. But I don't know. Maybe I'll just never get over the idea that the phrase indie community is an oxymoron. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess like into more general kind of, and I guess sort of relating to that, but like what kind of games are you playing nowadays, or like, or have you been able to at all, or?
Yeah.
It seems to be a thing that happens is like a lot of developers can't play games anymore because they're too busy.
That's a damn lie, I think. Whoever told you that is lying through their teeth. It's got to be the same for the two of you, that there's this kind of trap, and it's super interesting, and I don't think it's like easy to disregard this dilemma, but I think that we got to really just put both hands on it, and it's the fact that when playing games is part of your job, then you can sit there and play FTL for 48 hours straight and be like, it's research. I'm reviewing this, or I'm learning from it in some way, and I'm not just falling victim to it. That some games are of that variety, and of course, Car Life isn't. You're not going to play Car Life for more than a few times, if at all. But you still get the same rewards for it. But my point is like certain games like, I don't know, Dwarf Fortress FTL, Minecraft is probably that way. I'll bet sport games kind of have this effect on people too. Console games too. Spelunky is this kind of way where it's a kind of addictive. That's probably the wrong word, but they're time consumptive and they're dynamic enough to be different each time. And so they're unknowable. Yeah. Their flavor stays long after you've been chewing the gum, right? So it's maybe a trade hazard. I don't know what's the word, like a professional pitfall for both developers and for games critics and journalists, and hell, I mean, all those people that we just talked about. Even copyright attorneys are probably playing a lot of FTL, even though they've got to go pick up their daughter from school. So
you're just saying it sound like something you could fill out a like claims form for. Right. It's just like, I played 7 hours of FTL, couldn't help it. I don't know. It's true. Productivity's down, but yeah.
It's tricky. I try to temper it. I mean, it's tough and it's a struggle for me because I really enjoy those games. I love how well crafted they are, and I'm constantly at work stealing everything I can from them. So that's a big part of it. But also I think it's important. I mean, for me, I certainly don't want to make the presumption that this would be important for anyone else, but I find that it's good for me to kind of cross-train, if you will, by sitting on my butt and doing other leisure activities like reading books or watching movies, especially animated shorts, and listening to a lot of excellent live music. I think is also extremely important, but it's not lost on me
that stay cultured.
Yeah, but it's not lost on me that these are fucking leisure activities too.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm really actually working or bettering myself in some acquaintance with toil. These are self-involved means of making my own life better, and so they're kind of ingrown. And so I can regard them as professional virtues as much as I'd like, but they're not helping anybody but me.
Yeah. So
you got to do the other stuff too to kind of balance it out, I suppose. But I'll leave that up to the two of you.
So, are there any highlights of recent days? Like you mentioned Proteus, Splunky.
Oh, man, yeah.
Like I'm assuming those are from experience as well. Minecraft, FTL.
I haven't played Minecraft, and I probably should just for professional vocabulary.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've
tried a couple times. I don't get pulled in.
I've played a shitload of Minecraft.
Okay.
There you go. There's your testimony. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it right there. It's hard for me to imagine getting much out of Minecraft that I hadn't already got from Dwarf Fortress, I suppose.
Right.
Okay.
Which is a game that I love dearly. But also, I guess just as games, all the IGF nominees are fantastic. Proteus, of course, is great. Let's see. I finally, I have to say, I can tell you guys, I can give you an exclusive here that Gone Home is a real game.
Oh,
it does exist. I talked. I had the pleasure of sharing beers with Steve Gaynor from Fulbright Company.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And his whole team, I suppose, was up there. And having beers with him was great. But I had to admit to him that I thought that, right, like it's not really a game, right? Like the game is that it's like a piece of performance art, isn't it? It's like the game is the fact that you're telling us that there's a game and there's screenshots and judges are saying conflicting things about it, and
right,
like that's the game, right? He's like, no, it really does exist. And so he was really kind enough, or maybe I just got him drunk enough to where he sent along an FTP and I got the chance to play it, and it's super, super good.
Okay,
but it's of the kind where the rewards are kind of self-evident, and you don't need to play it for 48 hours to get the full flavor, to get all the nutrients. It's self-evident, which is super interesting because the amount of work that's gone into it is also easily appraised. It's, I mean, the degree of care that's gone into making this. I mean, like all of the little household items, the pens, the bars of soap, the shaving cream, notes, envelopes, game pieces, DVDs, all the stuff that's lying around in this home is fully rendered in 3D, and you can pick it up and screw around with it. It's and it's done for your pleasure, for the fact that it's rewarding
because
on its own.
It's interactive, right?
Exactly
like
right. Just that
like
it's
no
fully
number
realized.
pops up on the screen. It's just
exactly
you can
right.
touch it.
Yep.
That's interesting. That's kind of like the conversation we were having with Calvin French about his game, like his ambition to make as much of that world as like interactive as possible, makes it feel real, even if it doesn't look real.
Yep.
Yep. So that sounds really, really cool.
I have to say, since I'm talking about other games, I really feel the urgent need to remark on it. I mean, maybe it's redundant because a lot of folks are familiar with the pleasures of these games, and yet some folks aren't. So I like to play it safe and just remark on it anyways. And it's that there's a lot of super, super good work being done in Twine games and interactive fiction right now.
Okay.
There's so much out there, but maybe two of my most favorite games from last year were a game by Emily Short called Bee, and it's about a girl who's homeschooled and she's studying to be a spelling champion. It's incredibly well written. It's very rewarding in all the ways that video games are, and in a lot of unusual and atypical ways too. It's super good. Super, super good. And it's fast and dynamic. It's great. I can't recommend it more highly. Also, just for flavor, Porpentine made a game called Howling Dogs, which and many others. But the one that was most to my taste was this just vibrant nightmare called Howling Dogs, which is just browser based. It's text, and there's no parser. You just click on hyperlinks to interact with it. It's unbelievably good. It's mind blowing, and so it's not for everybody because it doesn't have a lot of the signifiers of video game rewards, and there's no graphics, there's no sound effects and audio, or the systems that interact are obfuscated. They're hidden. It's not exactly clear how your choices are affecting your experience with the game, and that to me is extremely interesting. There's so much good work being done. Andrew Plotkin is kind of messing around on iOS devices. He's written some real classic interactive fictions pieces, but kind of his experiments with the iOS and comics and stuff is super interesting too. So there's a lot of weird, less conventional gaming stuff that's gonna, it's already manifesting now in some of the most exciting work, I think.
I guess that kind of just brings me to like just thinking over like how vastly different things that can be described as video games can be. Like I'm just curious, like going forward, or are you going to continue kind of in the same vein as Cart Life, or like are you exploring completely different stuff? Like I was about to play this 47% game you had posted on your site. But
that was kind of just more of in the capacity of a political cartoon. I'd never done anything in Unity before, and my awesome editor at Gameological, his name's John Tatey, who's a hell of a writer, and he's also the world's most patient and perceptive editor. He said, sure, let's take a gamble and see if you can make a game about this 47% video in 2 weeks. So did it in Unity, and Unity's great. But I don't know if
are you going to explore the form, or
Yeah, well, I suppose honestly, to answer your question, Nathan, I didn't think that I was going to make games after Cart Life.
Okay.
I was going to be doing other stuff, maybe more in the realm of maybe film or writing or something.
Okay.
Because I had assumed that it was going to fail like everything else I do.
Okay. So it wasn't just so
self-pitying or anything. But yeah, I wasn't really happy with the way that Cart Life came out. And so I was kind of ready to move on to something else. But I think it's kind of gotten to the point where I have to take everybody's word for it and then maybe try their patience a little bit further. And so the games that I'm going to make in the future, and they're almost out the door. There's one in the way that Cart Life is a retail simulation, this next one is a murder mystery. And then after that, there's a game kind of about typing. So they're going to maybe be a little bit. I think they have the same objectives, and they're trying to accomplish the same things, but just kind of getting to know programmatic logic and how games work and stuff is really interesting. So maybe it's worth making a few more. And, until I go completely broke, and then I got to go back to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess the advice question. Should we just do that? We do that all the time. It's just like, hey, to any aspiring game developers, do you have like a phrase or a word of advice to those looking to get into this field?
I guess I got two pieces of advice. The first is invest in a good bathrobe.
Okay. Yep.
And secondly, don't seek out, and especially don't listen to, advice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
my second one.
That's good life advice, actually. The first one especially.
But yeah, the first one, the bathrobe's always going to come in handy.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. It's weird that people would ask me for advice. I get emails occasionally from game developers who want to know, and I try to honor their intention. Of course, it's extremely flattering, as anybody would know. It's super endearing and flattering and justifying and all these things. Validating, like you were saying, Paul.
Yes.
But also, like feel like an imposter a little bit. I always feel like maybe I've just sadly like I've told a lie well enough that people believe it. You know, it feels kind of rotten. So I just think like, why are you asking me when you could be making a game? You know, instead of listening to me talk about how to make them, learn how to do it yourself. I mean, that's, I guess, like here's the cliche is that, I mean, that's what I did. I just I saw that Cactus and Yahtzee Croshaw and these interactive fiction authors were they just picked up the tools and learned how they worked and they made a game. And you can do that now. It wasn't always that way. And I mean, maybe it's been that way for a few years now, but for a while, like these game development tools were proprietary and they cost a lot of money. And you had to license them or work as part of a team. It had to be your calling in life. It had to be your day job. But now anybody can do it. Anybody can make a game. And it's a lot easier than it seems. Like programmatic coding and scripting and stuff, it's not voodoo. It's just instructions. So you're just telling the screen. It's like puppetry. That's all it is. It's like verbal puppetry. So it's, you know.
Well, let me validate you once more by saying that that's generally the consensus that all the other indie developers have said. Just like, they're basically like, no, just go make a game, finish it. That's my advice.
Start something.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's because selfishly, I mean, like I listened to Miguel. I could listen to that guy talk all day. I love his accent.
Miguel?
Sternberg, yeah.
Yeah.
And Calvin French. I listen to all you guys' podcasts, and I was thinking, when this question came up, I'm like, it must be that selfishly, I think we want to see new stuff. We're relying on new blood to replace us, or at least keep us honest, because if we get complacent and we keep playing the same tricks.
Right.
And if I give explicit advice about how to make a game, for example, and then people make games like mine, it's kind of a disservice to the big responsibilities that games. I mean, even the word games and this old debate about how it doesn't, like you were saying, it doesn't describe what they do very well. And, you know, like Proteus, this whole nonsense is coming up once again about what's a game and what isn't. It's so tiresome.
Is that happening? Like that? Honestly,
crying out loud, yeah.
Like that seems to be what's happening. It's just like, what do you mean? Like something happens in that game? Like there's stuff.
Well, yeah, but even if it didn't.
Right,
I don't know.
it's still an interactive space that,
right.
You know.
But the best games, at least for me, and I'm glad to find I'm not the only one that feels that way. That the best games are the ones that destroy the precedent. We have to find Mario and slit his throat because games can be anything. In the way that a book can be an automotive repair manual, it can be a recipe book, it can be a life story, it can be the Bible, it can be a spell book. Anything. It could be the material fact of a book makes it makes no dictation on the content. It doesn't determine the content at all. It's just the vessel. And it's true for games too, and that's why games is kind of a shitty word for it, is because they can be anything. It can be education, it can be, you know, math worksheets should be replaced with number munchers, et cetera, over time. We all know it's the best way to learn anything, and so education is going to change. Journalism will change. Medicine, automotive repair, all this stuff is, you know, games will kind of, not games, but just interactive systems will constitute a larger part of everyone's life, and will factor into all these disciplines and crafts. And so we have to destroy the language and the precedent. This idea that they're toys made for young boys, especially, like. Or that they're frivolous
a very
or something.
Narrow view of what or like a real overly reverent, like for the certain patterns and stuff that have already happened, like genres or whatever.
Yes.
Like people need to start mixing those more. And
couldn't agree more. And that's why this thing about advice makes me nervous. Is because I don't want people
to do what you do.
Yeah, exactly. The fewer preconceptions that a young developer has, the better. The stranger, the more brave, daring, wild-ass work that they come up with, it's going to make the world better. The diversity.
Maybe we should retool the question. It's more just like, what did you do? Or something. How did you start?
What have you done?
Yeah, just how. That's the question.
How, question mark. And then
maybe we should just end on something that is less like trying to sound profound. Like, it's not trying to sound profound so much as like anybody listening that's interested in indie games and like stuff, they want to know how people did their game sort of thing. But then, like, at the same time, do you want to give that information out? Like,
Well,
that, yeah.
I suppose. I would say that the only good things in Cart Life they don't come from other games.
Yeah.
Because that's just the language that I'm trying to communicate something to you. The things in Cart Life that are worthwhile came from when my life was bad, because I took chances.
Yes.
I went out there and lived, and I got a crappy job and I couldn't make rent, or I had a hard time buying groceries, or I lived in a really shitty hotel for a long time, and the stuff that's worth remarking on is it just comes from the experience of living life, which ironically, I think that the stigma that games have of kind of interceding that or impeding, the stuff of life. I'm starting to think that it might be a little bit valid, even though you live a fuller life for having played good games. Bad ones will, of course, stop you from living a fuller life. But also that, like, even good ones, unless they're helping you meet new people or learn something or do something a little bit dangerous, I don't know. They can spill over into being an impediment pretty quickly. But at the same time, like, because of Indiecade and GDC and UCLA Games Art Festival and stuff like that in Twitter, and you guys, of course, your blog, and other games journalism and criticism, I've led a fuller life. So it's kind of this tricky balance, right? You have it's maybe this is the indie equivalent to the work-life balance. That in Cart Life you can either work all day and be sure to make money, or you can explore the city and meet new people and have interesting experiences at the expense of having a safe life.
Yeah,
maybe that's the equivalent. I don't know.
Yeah. And then also with Cart Life, it seems that, like, my experiences before in my actual life of working convenience, like a convenience store specifically, working the morning shift, having to cut the banding on the newspapers, fold them nicely, stack them, then get the coffee ready and stuff like that. It kind of ties back into this game that you've made from your experiences and stuff like that. So there's also an aspect where you really need to live your life, and then it will somehow like, for a good game to work, I think it has to work into what you've experienced and then talk to you in a certain way, which was what Cart Life did for me. Like, specifically Andres's thing, like Melanie, I'm just straight up, I can't relate to at all, because the kid thing, I'm not a woman. I don't have a sister at all. I'm not living there. I don't want to do a coffee house or anything like that. But like, with Andres' story specifically, I was going to say this a little bit earlier, but it was kind of weird because there's this whole immigration thing. And his is the first story I started in your game that I tried out. And this whole idea of immigrating to this new land, and then you're trying to do your, like, get your money, and you have to get your business set up and basically learn the ins and outs of everything in this new place. It's kind of like how when I picked up your game, I'm learning this game for the first time. I'm learning along with Andres, because I was saying this in a previous podcast, like about a month or two ago, how specifically there have been games that have used the thing where you're, like, typing to do something, but, like, with those games, like text-based games and stuff, you can usually cheat the system. So, like, for where it says we cut the banding or whatever like that, you could just put, like, cut in other games, and then, like, that's it. So it's just kind of weird that, along with Andres, who is also trying to learn English, I tried cheating the system and I was failing over and over. So, like, your game was teaching me the system as I was failing as well. Like, I don't know, there is a weird parallel between me and Andres, and the whole smoking thing. Like, it's really crazy how I have a cat. It's really crazy how that worked out. Like, maybe less so now because I understand how the game works. So now when I start a new game with him, it's an immigrant or whatever, and he's learning this place or whatever. But I had that one moment where me and him were on the same page. We were both new to this new experience, and that's kind of amazing. So
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, it's to deliberate to some degree that he doesn't know the town and you don't. I mean, I guess that's why like amnesia is often a common trope in games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your character doesn't know who they are, where they came from, because they have to learn the world at the same time you do.
Yeah.
And so Andrus's unfamiliarity with the town is part of it too, but also the failure is part of it too. It's deliberate and it's anticipated that players are going to struggle, and it's really discouraging to me a little bit that when players are encouraged by reviews to restart if they run into trouble, because you can get the ship upright and you can bail the water, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the anticipated playthrough, is that I know it's unnecessarily harder. It seems so.
But so is the first day of work. Like the first day at my job, I sucked at it. That's just the way it goes. You get better.
There was I just feel bad. Like there was only one time where I restarted, but I saw no way to correct it. It was when I bought all the coffee stuff without cups.
Oh, okay.
And I was already in debt, so I was just like, can I get a credit card or something? Like, I think I'm just done. Like, do you know if there's any way to get out of that hole?
Yeah, there's always a way.
Okay.
Well, I've anticipated that a lot of these dead ends are going to get run into, and tried to like give you alleyways to duck through. But I shouldn't say that there's always a way, because I don't know. The game's open enough to where
like that was the one time I felt like I just totally failed.
Did you go to the pawn shop and sell stuff?
I was like, I'd only get like $80 for my watch. Like I was still pretty deep because I went and bought a bus pass and all this stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're right, Nick.
You didn't buy cups.
I didn't buy cups for my coffee stand. It was the dumbest thing ever. Like I felt like Melanie would have made a better choice.
It's a pretty common mistake. I mean, it's
okay.
You forget the most obvious thing. I mean, even street vendors make that mistake all the time. You just like anytime you leave the house without your car keys, it's just on a bigger scale, you know.
The first time I played through, I didn't know there was a watch. So.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you obviously accounted for there being no cups because there was dialogue for it. Like, she was like, hey, like, first cup of coffee, let's go. Honorary customer. And I was just like, oh, I don't have that. It's a terrible moment, but yeah.
Well, some of the characters, I mean, depending on who comes by, they have their own cup, and you can just make their drink in the cup that they brought with them. But some of them don't. Most of them don't, of course. But some of them do.
Do you have one? You're a character in there.
I am, yeah. I don't have a cup with me.
Okay.
But let's see. There's a few of them do. The most obvious coffee addicts, I suppose, are the ones who are probably going to have a cup with them.
The dude that comes by like every minute asking for coffee.
Yeah, he's got one on him for sure.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, I think we should probably wrap. Like there was another question that just came up about the antagonism with the landlord or something, but I don't know. It's too explicit about my ending. Let's not worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, Car Life is available right now. Richard Hofmeier, thank you very much for talking to us.
Use this opportunity to, where can people get a hold of you, and where can they buy Cart Life and pimp all your stuff?
Oh, sure, of course. Well, thanks very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you guys. Normally I'd say, my website is richardhofmeier.com, but that's a lot to type. If you just Google Cart Life, it'll get you there. And Twitter and stuff, it's all the same. Just you can find your own way. I trust you. If you want to find me, I'm around. We'll
put it in the show notes. How's that? Look in the show notes for all of that.
All right. I kind of like people doing the work themselves. I want them to have to.
Actually, you know what? You're right. We're not even gonna write show notes. So if you're listening to this, you don't know what you're listening to.
Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks.